Welcome to Janome Club, brought to you by Janome Australia. We will be showcasing different Janome machines and accessories to enhance your sewing experience, covering a variety of topics, including quilting, dressmaking, and embroidery, with handy tips and tricks along the way so that you can get the most out of your Janome machine. For more inspiration, please like and subscribe, or you can check out our website at janome.com.au. Now let's get creating. This month, we're going to be talking about our piping foot. Janome have a number of different piping feet depending on what model machine you have. And as always, you can contact your local Janome stockist and they will be able to tell you what feet are available for your particular model. We have here on the table a 7mm piping foot and then two 9mm piping feet. One of them is a standard width up to 5mm of width of piping cord, and then we have our brand new narrow piping cord which allows you to do up to 2mm width. And when I turn them over, I'll be able to show you the difference of the feet. They do just clip onto your normal shank of your foot, so the little bar just clips onto your normal sewing machine foot shank. And if we have a look at the foot now, I can show you all about it. So you will notice if I bring down my A foot here in front, you'll notice the first thing is that the piping foot is quite short. That allows us to go around curves and have a bit more visual accessibility in a bit closer to where the needle is. So it is a bit shorter than your standard sort of A foot. And if we turn it over, you will notice on the back here there are some grooves that run down the back. And what they are for is that's for where your piping will sit when you sew. If I take this wider sort of cord here and I lay it down into the channel on the back, and it doesn't matter whether it's on the right or the left, you can see there that that fits down nicely into that channel. So when I actually have a piping cord made with the bias, you can very easily run that channel, the piping cord down that channel, and it will stitch perfectly onto the side of your piping cord. The reason we now have the two different feet is that if I take a skinnier piping cord and lay it down into the channel of this regular foot, you can see there's a lot of movement there left and right. So you might end up with piping cord that has got sort of bulges and skinny sections and things like that. So now we've brought this new one which is narrow, and that means that the little narrow piping cord fits much tighter into that groove on the feet, so you get a much more accurate stitch happening, especially for those beautiful fine little pipings that you want to put on things. Now, if you don't have a piping foot, or you want to do a piping that is bigger than your 5mm, which your standard foot does, such as something like this wider sort of pre-made cord that you can buy, then we do recommend using one of our zipper feet. You've got your standard, this is just a selection, there are numerous different zipper feet that we have. So again, contact your store and they'll be able to tell you what you can get for your model. This is a standard 9mm zipper foot. This one here is a 9mm walking zipper foot. So this is our AccuFeed dual feed system, and you can get a zipper attachment for the bottom of that one. And this is a adjustable zipper foot. So this one you move, if I undo the screw, you can actually move the foot left and right depending on where you want your needle position to be. So they are just a few of the other feet that are available that you can use for piping or for odd size piping that you might have. So let's zoom in again on this foot and I'll show you a few more things about it. You will notice here on the side, does that look okay? You'll notice here on the side that the back of the foot is actually got a cut out section here. What that allows is for when we turn a corner and your piping, if I sort of put my stylus here, your piping will then sit at a 90-degree angle to your foot. That just allows the you to turn around those corners, and I'll show you when we do the sewing how that actually part works, but that's another little part of the foot. So we have here on our table a couple of different options for piping. Now, one of the easiest thing you can do is just buy pre-made piping. The limitation to this is that it only comes in a certain range of colours and only a certain number of widths. So generally there's a thin and a thick in your primary colours and sometimes a couple of sort of secondary colours. But that is another option, that it's already got the cord inside and you can just buy them at your local Janome store. Then you've got the option, if you want to make your own piping, but you don't want to cut the actual fabric that goes on, you can buy this maybe the pink one might be easier to see. You can buy pre-cut bias strips, and that can be used then to make your own piping cord with buying the cord then. Again, this option does limit you to the colors that are available and also the sizes. You generally can get a thin cord, which is this like 12 mil, and then generally you can get a wider one, which is about twice that wide, about a 24 mil or 1 inch. So you may want to also make your own bias, and we're going to show you that a little bit later today. These ones down the front here are just a selection of some other cords you can get. As I said, this one here is starting to get on the point where it's a little bit too big for the actual piping foot, and you would use the zipper foot. The pink one is like a little woven cord, so it doesn't actually have a separate cord inside. It's just the way that the actual fibers of it are woven, that it has like a little tape and then a little raised section on the side. And you can also get lovely, beautiful little trims like this little pom-pom. Again, they just work by taking your foot and stitching down with the little pom-pom going up into the groove of the foot. So that's sort of some of your pre-bought options that you can buy. Depending on what store you're going to, they will have different options depending on whether they do furnishings or dressmaking or crafts and that sort of thing. So you can look around for there. The other option obviously is to make your own from scratch, and this way we can match our fabrics to whatever our project is. So you would first of all buy your piping cord from the store in the thickness that you want to use. So these are just two, a thin one and a thick one. So that would be your first thing, is buy this cord. I do recommend actually with this cord that, because generally they are cotton, they do shrink. So normally what I do is I tie a little knot in my ends. Where's my other end? Yeah, so I tie a little knot in the end. I then put this into a laundry bag and give it a very light wash, or otherwise sometimes I just put it in some hot water, give it a like a dunk, and then hang it out to dry, and then you've pre-shrunk your piping cord. So let's bring this one over here because I'm going to sew with that one. Okay, I'm just going to move all of this out of the way and I will show you our samples. So this one here, actually, let's take it all the way. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, this is our project that goes with the piping foot. That is available on our website under Inspirations tab. So if you go to janome.com.au and click on Inspirations, you can then have a look in there. This one is the current month's project, so you should find that. Oh no, actually this is November. This was November's project. So this one you will just either search for piping foot or have a scroll through all the different projects and you'll see this one. Now I've used a beautiful embroidery, which is one of the new embroideries that is from our Continental M17, but in the notes for the project I've just said either use an embroidery, or you might have a beautiful feature fabric that you don't really want to cut up, like a beautiful vignette or something. This would be the perfect project for those beautiful big prints that you could have a nice feature print in here. If we move over onto the sides, I have added piping here in between. I've got some skinny strips of white fabric, and then I have made my bias strips and my own piping cord in the same pink fabric that is the main panel and the little flange, and I've done these beautiful skinny little strips of piping through the side. And then on the edge, I have also, now let me just flip it like this. Is that in focus there? On the edge of this, I also have that very skinny little piping around the edge of the pillow. So this is where we've utilized it in both on like a flat space and then also on the edge. Okay, so let's move that one out and we will show you now. Now there are so many different ways to make bias fabric. So you could Google a tutorial on it and there's multiple different ways depending on whether you just want a few strips of bias or whether you want to have a huge amount of bias. This is just a basic little tutorial to show you. I have a piece of fabric here. All you need to do is you need to start with a piece of fabric. And the main thing actually I'll go through is that some of you may not know what we mean by bias. Okay, if we look at our fabric, fabric is generally, this is for woven fabric, is woven with a warp and a weft that run across your fabric and side up and down your fabric. What that is on these fibers, there's not really any stretch through this, a little bit on this one through my warp. No, that's my weft, left to right, weft. But there's generally not too much stretch. So if we're going to be using our piping cord, if I bring this back in, to go around a corner like this or to go on scallops or anything like that, you need it on the bias because you need it to stretch as it comes around those corners. So if you take a 45-degree angle on your fabrics and hold it up, you will notice that I get lots of stretch in that fabric. So that's what we mean by cutting on the bias, because we want that stretch of the fabric. So the way we do that is we take our piece of fabric and I fold mine then down 45 degrees. And that then gives us a true bias running through here. I would then get my rotary cutter and cut that off, and I end up with a triangle of fabric like this. I would then take this again to my cutting board, and then I would cut whatever widths I require. If we do it like this, so I would then cut my strips to whatever width I want, and I would end up with strips of fabric that are then that cut on the bias, so it gives them that nice little spring and stretch. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to our other camera now, because I'm going to show you how you would then join these pieces of bias together. So I have my two pieces of bias here. I have got on my O foot, which is my 1/4 inch piecing foot. You can do this at whatever seam allowance you want. I am going to be joining down here. Now, the one thing to remember with joining your bias strips, because we're joining it on a 45-degree angle running through here, is because we're joining the fabric on the straight. So because this is cut on the angle, we have to then join it through here, which is the straight part of the fabric. So if I were just to get it right, if I was just to fold those on right sides together, let's try and hold it here, and then stitch down here my seam allowance, this would cause a bit of a funny step. So if I stitched there and then open that up, I'm going to exaggerate it here, you end up with this funny seams here. So the way you need to do it to join your bias strips together is you need to have these little peaks showing. So these little peaks here need to be exactly whatever your seam allowance is. So I'm only doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So from the raw edge of my fabric to where I'm going to stitch needs to be a 1/4 inch. And I'm going to stitch from that little V point down to this little V point. Let's put that in under my foot. And we're going to stitch down. Turn my speed up. So I have stitched from that point down to this point, and now when I open that up, I get one continuous strip there. So you just have to remember that you need to have those little tails sticking out, and then you can trim them off as you need to and give that a press. So that's my little strip that I have. Then I'm going to swap over to my piping foot. So I've just taken my 1/4 inch foot off. I'm going to put my I2 foot. So our piping feet is an I foot, and this is the narrow one, which is my I2. That one will just clip on the bottom of my shank. I'm going to go to a center needle position. So these feet, the piping feet work with a center needle position, and then we have the channel on the left and the right. I'm going to say most of the time it's personal preference which one you use, except when you're stitching your piping onto around the corner of an item, and I will show you that in a little bit later, because you've got that, remember we showed you that cutout at the back of the foot here. We will be utilizing that when we go around the corner. So I take my bias strip, I lay my fabric my piping cord on the wrong side of the fabric, and then I fold my fabric and match my raw edges. Then that goes under my foot, and then I'll put my foot down. So because my raw edges on this one that I'm stitching are on the left, my piping cord is in the right-hand side. So where I'm going to stitch then is on the edge of this piping cord, but on the bias tape. So we can then stitch along here, and this is making the cord. If you have a machine that does have the sewing applications, some of them underneath the optional other feet does have a piping cord button that you can press, and then you've got one for attaching and one for making your piping. And here we have then some little skinny piping cord that is made in my desired fabric. I do like working with a slightly larger piece of fabric. I find it a bit easier than working with a narrow piece, and you can get some specialty rulers that have a little groove down them to allow you to cut seam allowance, but you can talk to your local quilt shop about that. Once we have made our piping cord, we would then want to put it on our item. So here I have my feature sort of panel. This is my sort of center panel from the pillow. And I'm going to show you first of all how I would make a bit the little pieces of piping cord that just overlapped each other in the center. So I have got here the raw edge of my pink fabric. I've then got this white piece of piping cord that I'm putting down, and I'm going to lower my foot, and because I'm now stitching along the center here, my piping cord is in my left hand side. So as long as it's in the opposite side groove to where you want to stitch, so that you make sure that you're always stitching on the actual tape. So this one, you would stitch from one edge of the pillow to the next, and I stitch all the way to the end, and then I cut my threads off, and then right at the edge here, I just cut that. Oops. I just cut that off in line with the raw edge of the fabric. Then I come in and we take our piece of piping cord, matching raw edges again, and I just lay it over the top of the one that I've sewn, and we stitch from the edge all the way to the next edge along. Just do a little bit there and show you. So then that there does your little overlap here, and then you would put your next couple of pieces of fabric on there, your next strips on. Okay, now if we are going to go around a corner, let me just cut this off and I will show you going around a corner. So here's my corner of the edge of my pillow that I want to make, and I've got my piping cord. So again, we match raw edges here. We're going to stitch down. And I'm going to stop maybe 2 or 3 centimeters away from the edge. Because what I need to do is I need to look at where my point is that I'm going to be turning this corner. So what I need to do is I need to look at the distance, and I could measure it. I do have a little ruler here. So I can measure here. I've got exactly 3/8 of an inch. So then I want to measure 3/8 of an inch up from this raw edge that I'm coming into. And once I've got that exact point, I then can make a cut, a little snip there in my bias tape. So I've only snipped up to the little row of stitching that is holding my piping cord in. And if I just do this and twist it around, I can check. There you go. So that will then stitch down. So the way I do it is I hold it sort of at the front here, and I'm going to stitch down exactly to that point there where that I've made that little snip. I'm going to stitch down exactly to that point. Oh, I've done one stitch too much. I'm just going to go back. You can see down the little hole there to make sure you've got exactly a spot. And depending on what measurement you've got there, you do have the markings on your needle plate that you can utilize to help you as well. Once we've made it to that point, I'm going to stop with my needle down. I'm then going to not raise up my needle. I want to raise up my foot. I've just pushed the wrong button. That's okay. I'm going to raise up my foot. So my needle is down and my foot is up, and my needle is down. I'm not sure how much you can see if we do this. So my needle is exactly in the point where the little cut is. So then I'm going to turn this around because I now want to stitch down the other side, and we're going to bring our piping cord here in line with the next raw edge, and then I'm going to layer my foot down. And I'll just get this secure, and then we'll swap over to the other camera. Now, I don't know if you need to zoom in here at all. We're just going to change this camera angle so you can see what is happening at the back of the foot. So this is the little cutout that is on the back of the foot, and this is where it comes into its own when you're going around a corner. So you can see here that my foot is sitting nice and flat against my, where are we here? So you can see here my foot is sitting nice and flat against the fabric, which is in touch with the feed dogs, and that's what we need. So this little piping cord that's here is sitting in that little cutout that's at the back of the foot, and that allows me then to stitch round that corner perfectly without any issues. We'll cut off there and I'll show you. Over here again. So there we have our piping cord. You would then put your back of your fabric on your pillow, like put that right sides together, stitch around there again, and then you could bag that out. And then if I just fold these under, you can see there. Yeah. Let me get it right, and then I'll hold it. And then you've got your little piping that's around the edge of your item. So we're going to go over to our other table here, and I will show you a few more examples of your piping cord. Now, for those people who are dressmakers, not crafters, piping cord looks amazing around the neckline of a garment. So you can do this on a like a sweetheart neckline is beautiful, and you definitely would need the bias because then you're going over like the curves of a neckline. And you could then pipe on the edge, and then you've got your lining on the inside, and it's really great because it actually means then the lining is sort of like hidden because the piping cord there, and you're never going to have that lining popping out. So it doesn't matter if your lining is a different color, you've got that option. And I'll show you what I'm talking about if I go down to this particular bag here. Oops, I've just dropped all my other samples on the floor. So here we have this sort of like zigzaggy fabric on this bag, and we've put piping along the top of the bag. And inside I've done a sort of plain green lining there. And you can see that that piping running along the top there, or even if I go down to this black one, I've got the green piping and the green lining inside. That is beautiful at sort of like highlighting that I'm never going to have this lining popping up and showing on the top. So that's a lovely way to finish a formal dress or a wedding dress, or even piping looks lovely on even around a neckline on a little girl's pinafore would look just beautiful. So there's where we've used piping in a bag. So we've done it along the top of the pocket and then around the top of the bag. Here's another bag. This one was from, I think about 2 years ago. We did, when we first started doing our Zoom meetings, this was a little one on sewing applications. So you can search up to, I think it will probably be under sewing applications for this one. It was a Zoom session we did where we did decorative stitching and some gathering, and then we've put some piping into the actual panels of the little bag that we made. So there's sort of some options that you could do. And this, even if I sort of like turn this under, that would make like a beautiful little sleeve on a dress with a little bit of gather through the middle, and you could have that as the, you know, the edge of the piping would be the edge of this sleeve. That would look really lovely. Thank you very much. Here is another pillow that we've done where we've got sort of like a medium width of piping around, and again we've made our own piping cord. It is a like a gold sort of metallic, and you get the beautiful texture coming through on there. And here is another little pillow. We do like our pillows here. This one is utilizing the little pom-pom trim that we had. So we've done the pom-pom trim and we've stitched it on here, and then rather than bagging it out with the backing, so that would be so that your piping is, say, on the edge, we've left it out, and then we've actually bound this the same as we would bind like the edge of a quilt, and it gives like this little flange around the outside of your pillow. So I'll bring this one back in now that you've had a look at how we've stitched this all. I'll bring this in and show you again. So here is the piping that we did first, where we've overlapped it to each other. So you can see we've stitched this one along first, then we've put this layer on, and then we've added the next row of strips, and then we've done a second row of piping, and then a third row of the strips. And all the details for the size requirements of cutting your fabric are in the project notes. So remember, they're at janome.com.au under the inspiration tab. And you can make yourself a beautiful cushion that has your favorite featured fabric or a beautiful embroider panel in the center. Thank you so much for joining us at Janome Club. We hope we have inspired you to keep on stitching. For more information on any of the machines, accessories, or projects that you've seen in today's video, please see the links in the description below, or visit the Janome Australia website at janome.com.au.